You're listening to The Paul Higgins Show, where ambitious tech consultants come to unlock their potential. After 18 years as a global leader, I launched several businesses, culminating in a successful exit. I'm sharing what I learned, plus what's working now from mentoring tech consultants. You will hear leaders within our industry to help you build a business you love that allows you to do what you want. If you are looking for immediate cash flow wins to fuel your growth, go to our free ebook at paulhigginsmentoring.com/roadmap. Imagine you're an upcoming partner and you look the same as all your other peers. Hello, this is Paul Higgins, and welcome to episode 558 of The Paul Higgins Show. In this podcast, I talk to David Priemer from Cerebral Selling about how to break through that clutter as a partner and rise above the rest. Like most of us, David never thought he'd end up in sales. He started his career tinkering with test tubes and differential equations as an award-winning research scientist before spending 20 years leading top-performing sales teams and high-growth technology companies, including Salesforce, where he was vice president of commercial sales and creator of the Sales Leadership Academy program. Today, as the founder of Cerebral Selling, David's unique science and empathy approach is driving revenue and talent growth. And he's been published in the Harvard Business Review, Forbes, Entrepreneur, and Inc. magazine, to just name a few. Often referred to as the sales professor, David is also the author of two best-selling books, which we mention in the show in detail, but Sell the Way You Buy and The Sales Leader They Need. And as well, he is an adjunct lecturer at the Smith School of Business in Queen's University and also the London Business School. If you'd like to see David and I in the interview, go to Paul Higgins Mentoring YouTube channel. And now we'll hand you over to David Priemer from cerebralselling.com. Great to have you here, David.
Pleasure, Paul. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I'm really excited about today's interview because you've obviously spent some really quality time within Salesforce, and we'll talk about that. But you also help Salesforce partners, and you also help the end clients that work with tech consultants. So, real value that you can add to you who's listening today. But why don't we kick off with who your ideal clients are and what problems you solve for them?
Yeah. So in general, I work with high growth technology companies like the Salesforces of the world, but also, smaller organizations as well. And I connect with them when they're struggling to sell more, like everyone's trying to do these days. And they've noticed a few things. Like it's very difficult. It's relevant to your audience as well. Very difficult to break out of the sea of sameness. There's just so many solutions that all sound the same, and our customers tend to discount them.
Yeah.
A lot of them are hiring lots of young, enthusiastic sales reps, but are still struggling to manifest the authentic conviction they need to convert customers. And then they're just drowning in sales tactics and they don't know what works. So that's when people say, okay, I just can't keep doing what I'm doing. I need to find a different solution. And they call me and we help fix things for them.
And I'm assuming your phone's pretty hot at the moment, or that's what we used to say in the old days, that whatever the equivalent is there, your WhatsApp or whatever. But it's tough out there. There's not a partner that I talk to that isn't finding it a little difficult at the moment. We've sort of got the post-COVID bloat of tech stack. And then I even heard someone on Harry Stebbings' 2020 VC. It's a great podcast if you hadn't had a chance to listen to it. And they sort of said, if you're not a major player, just forget it, because it's everyone's cutting their stack rather than adding to it. So, what's your perspective on how the industry is going right at this time when we're recording this in 2024?
Well, it's interesting because when I work with, let's say, the Salesforces of the world and companies like that, I hear the same thing. During the pandemic, companies were driven to the cloud because they couldn't meet their customers in person, the way they used to, and all the cloud software took off. But also, the reps didn't have to go on site to meet with people anymore because they couldn't,
Yes.
And then when people started coming back, everyone was remote. What happened is all of these companies like the Salesforces are sitting there lamenting. They're like, well, now the world has changed. People don't have money. They don't want to spend stuff. Budgets are tight. We had that post-pandemic, we were in the pandemic bump, but now we have reps who don't really go on site to meet their customers anymore. And they've lost the muscle memory of what things used to be, before the pandemic. Because, in the pandemic, things were kind of a little bit easy. We're kind of in this soft stage now. And if you're a Salesforce partner, you're kind of drafting on that, right? Because you're
Yeah.
tethered to the Salesforce business. There's a bunch of kind of macro things that are happening, but that's what's driving the slump that some people are feeling.
And do you work, like I said, both with Salesforce, but also with Salesforce partners as well, as an example?
I do. Yeah.
Right. So, and because you've worked within Salesforce as well, and now you're running your own business where you've got to attract people, you've got a great 360 there. What is and where I'm sort of going with this question is there's a lot of talk at the moment around, the capability of reps, like you said, whether they're now remote, some have got to now generate leads versus just leads falling in their lap. And there's a real struggle, and some people are saying that, clients are just going direct to partners or, finding their own solutions because, this sales isn't what the caliber of the sales people weren't what they used to be. So, what's your sort of perspective on that? Are you seeing that? Yeah, give us your thoughts on that.
Well, it's interesting. So I've been a Salesforce customer 3 times before, and to do you one better, I ended up working at Salesforce because they acquired my company. So I had a small business
Yes.
that they acquired. So I was a customer, came over with the ship. Now I'm at this big company. I was there for 5 years, and I used to run small business sales for the Eastern U.S. Even though I'm in Canadian out of Toronto. I was back to selling to the customers like I was just not too long
Yes.
ago,
Yes.
kind of seeing it from the inside and the outside. And the funny thing is, like when you're on the inside of a Salesforce, like imagine all of these reps, they keep getting promoted and transferred. Like, good on them. The company keeps growing.
Yes.
What that means is if you're a customer, you're getting like a new rep every year, even at even before that was the case. As a rep at Salesforce, I'm trying to come in and understand what my new customer accounts are like and what their challenges are and so on. So like sometimes I don't have time to mess with a partner and figure out kind of what's going on. And when I train Salesforce, I say, like, imagine what that experience feels like to the customer. Like it feels horrible. Where like I have to break in a new rep every year.
Yes.
But when I work with the partners, and you say like a lot of the partners are going direct to the customers, and here's where I see the opportunity. One of my clients, a Salesforce partner, did something brilliant, which is they went to their customer, Salesforce customer, and said, "Hey, look, Paul, next year, you're going to get another Salesforce sales rep, and you're going to have to break them in and explain to them about your business and all that kind of stuff. Don't do that. That's a waste of your time. When you get your new Salesforce sales rep, send them to me.
Yeah.
Like I'm the partner. Like I'll tell them what you've been doing." And so I've seen a lot of partners like lean in. I thought that was brilliant. Lean in and kind of help the customer, kind of transition this kind of what would otherwise be a bad start of year experience, and really step in and play that role. So I do think there's a tremendous opportunity for partners to kind of, be the, if I can say, trusted advisor, that not that their Salesforce sales reps don't want to be, but just by virtue of all the positive turnover, sometimes, unintentionally create a bad experience around.
Yeah, that's brilliant. I've never heard of that, and that's if you're a Salesforce partner listening, that's perfect. But if you're also across other platforms, whether you're in NetSuite, Zoho, whatever, it's the same thing because ultimately, I know Zoho is a little different because normally you've got to generate more leads yourself. But if you are relying upon a partner to get some of your leads, if some of your majority, that's a brilliant strategy. And like if you take a macro view of your time within Salesforce, how much of their revenue is through existing clients versus how much is it new?
It depends on the segment. However, the revenue that comes from existing clients is a significant, of any reps, even down to the territory. Like some reps might have more existing install base, some more net new,
Yeah.
but it's definitely a significant part. And I would say not only just from a rep perspective, if I'm Mark Benioff,
Yes.
the bet that I'm making as I grow the company is that like I've already maxed out on my market share of CRM to, to some extent. Where I'm going to get the growth is by acquiring all these other companies and selling them, to customers. So I need those dollars of recurring, customer revenue. And we even knew back at Salesforce that, every dollar that a customer spends with us turns into $2 in the next year and $7 in the next 3 years. So it's a huge part of the strategy.
Like you said, you've got Salesforce partners as clients, and you've got a book which we're going to talk more about in a moment, which is the sales leader they need. But what are the unique things that you talk to partners about, given the fact that you were once a customer of Salesforce, you went and worked in Salesforce, and now you're helping them with sales? What are the unique things that you tell them that most partners don't do or don't know?
Yeah. So I'd say there's two things. Number one, as a Salesforce customer, which I was,
Yeah.
I didn't use a partner. I'm like, I don't need partners. I can do, I'm smart. I can do this myself. Between us, I ended up hiring a high school student as an intern to implement my Salesforce for me. I'm like, oh, this is great, right? You have a lot of customers out there that are thinking that they don't need you, right?
Yes.
Like they can do it themselves. My advice, and this is my advice to any sales organization, is that you're no longer selling a product, you're selling a problem.
Yeah.
I need to convince you that of the problem that my solution solves. But more importantly than that, I need to sell you on why you cannot solve this problem on your own. Because even if I said, Paul, you can't, like Salesforce is really tough. There's all this nuance. You want to make sure it's done right. You'd be like, hey, David, no problem. I'm going to hire this high school, intern, and they're going to, they're really smart. They're going to fix that for me. And I need to sell you on why you cannot solve that problem on your own and why whatever you're thinking of doing is not going to work. That's kind of like the mindset that a Salesforce partner needs to be in these days, or any sellers, like sell the problem, why it exists, why the customer can't solve it on their own. But then even if you can do that as a Salesforce partner, you exist in a sea of sameness with hundreds, thousands of Salesforce partners. So the question is like, why am I going to choose you?
Yes.
Right, back to like how am I going to know? Because even if I agree that I have this problem, it's like I want to lose weight, get in shape, I need to go to the gym, but there's like a million gyms I
Yes.
can go to. So how will I know? That those are the two things: is like convincing Salesforce customers that they have a problem that needs to be solved and they can't solve on their own, and
Yes.
then why us? Those are the two things.
And where does the line between, traditional marketing and sales, where's that line sort of blur for you? Because a lot of that is around positioning and positioning yourself uniquely versus the rest. How much do you go into that or not?
Look, as a primarily solopreneur, as we were talking about in my business,
Yeah.
I don't have time to go out and start prospecting into people and saying, "Oh, it's me, David from Cerebral Selling. Have you heard?" So what I do is I have a point of view, and I share that point of view through my books and my blog and my YouTube channel, and I put the vibe out there. And people who say, "You know what? I like what this guy's saying. I think he can help us." They reach out to me, and we kind of go from there. So I think that, so from a couple of different perspectives. Number one is, as a partner, to the extent that you can do some of this, I use this, it's funny, I'm saying like HubSpot inbound marketing kind of approach, I think is very powerful. But also I will tell you, I have a keen perspective on all these things, but I've written 2 books, I've created tons of courseware and content and IP. The more that I write things down and crystallize them, the clearer they become in my head. So the act of writing isn't just so that you can promote your business. It actually produces this mental clarity that you need if you want to convert customers. So I like this idea for those of you listening out there, creating content that draws your customers in. It does great from a marketing perspective, but also from the perspective of crystallizing your point of view, which I think is really important.
Someone listening at the moment might be saying, "That's great, David, but I don't have a great personality like you. Like I'm not a front man. Like I don't feel comfortable in front of camera, etc. I'm a tech person. That's my background. I really feel uncomfortable about creating my own content. I feel uncomfortable putting myself out there." Well, what do you say to someone who says that to you?
Yeah, well, I mean, look, you don't have to get on camera. You don't have to, be animated. Writing is free, and you probably already have a website. It's something that you can do, crystallize your point of view, take your time with it. But also, then the question is, all right, what would you do instead? And it's funny, in the pandemic, the other kind of, I guess, persona that often reaches out to me is another solopreneur business person who says, hey, look, I want to leave corporate. I want to start my own job, my own firm one day. David, what advice do you have for me? And I said, look, if I was a customer looking for you and the service you provide, how would I know you're the fit for me?
Yes.
Unless you create any content. I'll tell you, when I wrote my first book, Sell the Way You Buy, I needed to get some headshots done for the book and stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
Recommended to go to this guy's website. And I went to his website, and on the homepage, he had a video that he made. And he said, and I still remember, he's like, you're probably here if you're like a coach, consultant who wants to like unleash your creativity on the world, and you want to see the best picture someone has ever taken of you. And I was like, take my money. I'm sold.
Yes.
I mean, it was very emotionally compelling. But
Yes.
unless you're out there crystallizing what you know, what you believe, like why would anyone hire you? You might have all this great genius bottled up in your head, but
Yes.
no one cares,
Yes.
right? Unless they can see it somewhere.
And you mentioned before that, some of the assets you got your book, you've got your YouTube channel, you're active on LinkedIn. What in particular with YouTube and the way that AI is going, have you got a point of view on, you said there's content, but what's the AI prioritizing in the content that they do use? So, like I use Perplexity. I think it's a fantastic app, perplexity.ai. David. So I basically went into Perplexity and, I do all my research firsthand through something like Perplexity. What's Perplexity going to draw from to understand that authority?
Yeah, it's interesting. So, like, I think AI can be very powerful. I do believe it's not there yet. And I'll give you an example why. So, I wrote this book, Sell the Way You
Yeah.
Buy. It came out in 2020. I can go into ChatGPT and I can say, hey, ChatGPT, can you summarize Sell the Way You Buy by David Priemer, chapter by chapter? And it's partially wrong. And I know that because I wrote the book. So when I read it,
Yeah,
it's like,
yeah,
hey, look, it
yeah,
says there's 9 chapters. There's only 7 chapters. It
yeah,
talks about things that are kind of, it sounds correct-ish in some instances, but others completely off base. And it's funny, I was just on another podcast I was saying earlier today, we were talking about AI, and we were talking about this idea that yes, the AI can help understand that Paul has a business and he's the CEO, and this is what businesses like him do. But then I still get this a ton where people are prospecting into me and they say, hey, David, as the founder of Cerebral Selling, you probably care about this.
yeah.
And whatever this is completely wrong, right? I think we're like early stages in terms of, AI's ability to really nail this in a way that doesn't risk pissing your customer off because you're getting it wrong.
Yeah, and I think the other thing is that if it's that easy, everyone's doing it, right? So that sameness, you're just going into the same trait because if you're doing it, everyone else is doing it, everyone else is getting the same information, right? So what do you got to do differently? So that sort of leads us into the book, the sales leader they need. There's four key components that ChatGPT summarized when I put your book in there and said, tell me about it. So that's what ChatGPT did. But the great thing is we don't need to rely on ChatGPT today. We've got you and we can
Mhm.
ask you. So take us from what's in the book to how that can help a Salesforce partner. And if you're not a Salesforce partner, insert whatever platform partner you are.
Yeah. So there's 2 books. The first one is called Sell the Way You Buy. The second one is called The Sales Leader They Need. They're 2 completely different books on different topics. So The Sales Leader They Need is all about, hearts and minds, sales leadership,
Yeah.
tactical, emotional, all that stuff.
Yeah.
I would say if you're a Salesforce partner, if there's value in diving into the sales leadership element, then The Sales Leader They Need would be great. But I think Sell the Way You Buy is where you would want to start
Yeah.
because Sell the Way You Buy gets into the science of how people make purchasing decisions. It
Yeah.
gets into like high impact messaging, little tweaks you can make to your narrative to make it more emotionally compelling to your customers, how to do good discovery, how to, handle objections. So and it's all science and empathy based topics because everyone's has a different origin story. I was a research scientist and I got into sales by accident at the turn of the dot-com boom. And
Yes.
even though I did 4 startups and got acquired, all 4 of the startups got acquired and one was acquired by Salesforce, I was always plagued by this idea that people just go out there, especially in sales, and they just use tactics just because that's what we've always done. And then we get into trouble when those tactics don't work anymore. We don't really understand why they do. So Sell the Way You Buy would be a great, I'd say, like foundational read for people to get into to help illuminate some of these pathways.
Yeah, and just on that, like, once again, there's talk. I won't need a Salesforce AE. I won't need a partner selling to me. Most of the decision making I can do all the research myself, and that'll be good. That's the utopia. Like, how far? Well, firstly, will that utopia ever happen? And if it will, like, how far away is that?
I think it depends on the type of product we're talking about. It's funny, I was talking on another podcast earlier today, and we were talking about how customers are now becoming more accustomed and comfortable spending $50,000, without even talking to a rep
Yes.
for a product. And I said, that makes sense. For example, if I was buying Salesforce and all I need was like basic Salesforce licenses, that's fine. Or like if I was buying a car or an iPhone or it's like some kind of commodity. But if you're in the Salesforce business, innovative software, and Salesforce offers all of these new technologies, many of which customers are not even familiar. I will tell you, as a quick story, when Salesforce acquired my company, I'm on the executive team of a company that got acquired by Salesforce. I was a Salesforce customer. I come over with the ship to Salesforce. This is 2012. I was in San Francisco sitting in what they at the time they called Cloudforce, which was like a smaller version of Dreamforce that they do in various cities, but still 20,000 people at this event. And I'm sitting watching all these crazy demos that they're doing of the software. And I just got acquired. And I'm thinking to myself, I had no idea that we did any of this,
Yes.
right? So as a customer, sure, I can do research, but with all these solutions that are new and innovative and different, these aren't mainstream products yet. And for that, I need someone to hold my hand
Yes.
through the experience. It's not that, buying CRM is so difficult, but
Yeah.
it's all of the other products and services, which you as a partner will get a lot of value from leading your customer through. And quite frankly, Salesforce needs as much support as it can get, right? Because customers think of Salesforce as like a CRM company.
Yeah.
And that's not the basis by which Salesforce is going to grow into the future just by selling CRM.
A great point. And to me, one of the things, I'm lucky that I came from a system that was very much like Salesforce. It had a franchisor and it had a franchisee. But think of Salesforce, the company, Salesforce, the partner. It just happened to have a very unsophisticated product. So Coca-Cola, there's not much you're going to talk about with Coca-Cola, right? It's basically sugar and water in a can. So, we had to learn about someone's business because it was the business that was so important because the product was so basic. I think the hard thing in this system, when I moved across from that world into the SaaS world and into here, is people are so consumed by the complexity of the product that they forget to understand the business. And the two have to work hand in hand. And that's where, like, I think you're right. Like for new additions in the whole ecosystem, you're going to need someone from Salesforce to tell you that. But for a lot of the product features and all now, you can go in and basically find that out yourself. Like the user manual is now a lot easier to do, but the people side of it and how you use it and how their business model works, I think is different. And I constantly tell people, you're not a Salesforce partner. You're a consultant for this industry. You're a consultant for this type of business and you understand the business and then the technology, how the two move together. What are your thoughts on that point?
100%. So it's funny, when I started in sales, I was a solution engineer, functional technical product expert. I would do custom coding for demos and I loved the product. But as I got more senior in my career and I didn't have time to really know what the products do at a detailed level, I became better at at sales because I'm not encumbered by the details. I'm focused on the problem, why it exists, why customers can't solve it on their own, like the direction that we're going in. There are people that need to know the nuts and bolts, and some customers do at some point need to know that. But I think sometimes the focus too much on the product is a hindrance.
Yes.
And I make most of my living working with companies who do a great job enabling their teams on what the products do. But they find that when those reps go out into the field and articulate to the customer what the products do, the customers don't give a crap, right? As
Yeah.
I spend a fraction of percent of my time caring about what you do, I
Yes.
got my own problems here.
Yes.
To the extent that we can level up, focus on problems, be less encumbered by the details, especially in the early going, I think we're going to do better.
Yeah, I think that's so true. And the other key question I often get asked by my clients is, when do I bring in a salesperson? Maybe, I'm doing well on sales, but I'm not doing enough of it. I don't spend enough time on it, or I don't have the skills and competencies. Like, you and I were lucky that, certainly your time in Salesforce, and now we were trained from a corporate, some of the best companies in the world. So we've got that to fall back on, whereas a lot of people don't. When do you see as the right time to either continue to develop your own skills and be the owner that sells versus bring in someone to help you with the sales?
Yeah. Well, I found, even in the startup world, there's all sorts of different types of founders.
Yes.
Like there's some founders that are very sales and marketing focused, and others that are very product focused, and other CEOs that are product focused, but they don't mind selling.
Yeah.
And then there's some people that hate selling. Like you need
Yeah.
to sell, but you hate doing it.
Yes.
So either I would say number one is try to sell through some of these. If you hate selling tactics, do this. Lead with stories. Do more writing, create content. So you're kind of just being authentic. There's no pitch. It's
Yes.
just more like getting really in tune with the problems and all the kind of things we talked about. And if you're comfortable with that, great. If not, then it's also okay, even early on, to hire a salesperson. I know, like I say in quotes, because People don't like salespeople, but someone who can come into your business and help you articulate the problem statement, the narrative, create, assets around it, and maybe do some of the writing to kind of help you along if you're very averse to, sales. Although, a lot of people find that even if they hate selling, if I can use the word hate, I know it's a strong word,
Yeah.
some of these other things they're very happy to share because they like being able to articulate the success that their clients are having and the nuance and the problems that they solve. But yeah, I would say there's no reason not to bring in a salesperson, even very early on, if you're finding that that's been a challenge for you.
Yeah, yeah, and I think that's a good answer. It's got to fit the situation, but you got to play to your strengths. And I
Mhm.
think trying to be someone you're not is hard, right? It's hard for you, but it's also that shines across to the person you're selling to. And cerebral selling, just as why did you pick that name? And tell us a little bit about what that means as a concept.
The origin story, there's kind of two things that intersected. Number one was when I was at Salesforce, they like it when entrepreneurs come in from the outside.
Yes.
And so they said, hey, do you want to write for like the Salesforce blog, share some of your perspective? So I started writing. And by the time I left Salesforce, I had dozens of posts. And some of the posts ended up getting picked up by outlets like Forbes and Entrepreneur. So I kept doing it. And then I ended up with all these articles everywhere. And then I was just like, well, look, when my friend Paul calls me up and says, hey, David, do you have any help or advice? I'm like, I'm sending you links all over the internet. So I said, you know what? I need to have a website
Yeah.
where I just put all my content. So Cerebral Selling just started in my last VP of sales role, just as a blog to have space for it. But as a research scientist and like a thinker, the word cerebral was one that had been knocked around. But the quick of it was the first person to ever call me cerebral. I'm a 2-time cancer survivor, and as a cerebral person, going through cancer super sucks
Yeah.
because you just keep thinking about everything, right?
Yeah.
Remember when I had a surgery and I was meeting with my surgeon after the surgery, and he said, David, I know you're a pretty cerebral guy, so I'm going to explain. Like he was giving me the debrief. Here's what we
Yeah.
did, and here's what we found. You're a pretty cerebral guy, so I'm going to explain it like this. And so my cancer surgeon was the first person to call me cerebral. And so when I came up with the name of my website, it just kind of popped into my head, and that's where it came from.
Fantastic. Well, I'm so glad that the surgeon did a great job, and you're here helping the world today. And I know you've got some online courses. So obviously, like you said, you do some work with some of the larger partners, but there's also if you're a solo listening to David today and you want to get access, there's some online courses as well. What are we'll put the links in the show notes, but what value am I going to get as a partner going to your online courses?
Yeah, 100%. So, all the courses are available on my website. If you're interested, you can go and check them out. But the idea behind it's funny as a recipient of sales training for many years, especially at Salesforce. What they
Yes.
did at Salesforce was, once or twice a year, they would bring in the trainer for like a day. You would go in a ballroom somewhere or sit in a conference room and you would listen to the trainer for a day, 2 days, and you would leave and it would be good, but then you'd forget everything and just go back to your desk and do what you're doing before. So
Yes.
my approach to the training, even when I do it live, is to have something that's a little bit more slower paced.
Yes.
And I do this with my online training, where you come in, there's multiple courses, so there's like messaging, discovery, objection handling, and so on. Where I come in, I give you like a few tactics, and I ask you to go away and try those and iterate and refine, and then come back for more. So it's a self paced course. Whether it's my sales academy, which is my foundational course, or my sales leadership course, I typically recommend people take a few months to work through the content. I don't cut people off. I give you access to some live office hours as well with me,
Yes.
just to kind of go through bit by bit, iterate, learn in the field, come back for more. And I try to it's funny when you're a trainer or even a practitioner or partner, it doesn't matter what I know. It only matters what I can communicate to you
Yes.
and have you do. So I put a lot of thought into how I structure things, how I articulate the pains and the challenges and the solutions. So yeah, designing like a teaching, I guess methodology is a lot different than just knowing something. So hopefully, if you ever explore it, you find that that's all baked in.
Brilliant. Well, just a reminder, we are listening to David Priemer. Is 558 is the podcast episode, and we'll have all the links to the book, both books, the courses, and the website, which is cerebralselling.com in the show notes. But what we're going to do now is take a quick pause. We're going to thank our sponsors, and then we're going to come back with the rapid fire. Running a tech consulting business can feel like a solo journey, but what if you didn't have to navigate it alone? Introducing the Tech Collective, your go-to resource for tackling those burning questions and unlocking your potential. Join a dynamic collective of experienced tech consultants ready to share insights, strategies, and support to help you today. Grappling with sales, clients, team challenges, our Tech Collective has your back. Join us today at paulhigginsmentoring.com/TC. There's a link in the show notes. There's a small application, and as a thank you for being a listener, enter the coupon code TC, capital TC25 at checkout. That's TC25 to get 25% off. Visit paulhigginsmentoring.com/TC today. Brilliant, David. Great to have you back. Are you ready for the rapid fire?
Sure, absolutely.
All right. I'm going to ask you rapid questions, get rapid responses. So the first one is, what are the daily habits that you do to help grow cerebral selling?
I think writing, like I said, the more you write, the more you're forced to crystallize your thoughts and why things have changed, why things are different, so you can help your customers. And in a world where the world of selling and buying is changing by the day, being able to just kind of sit down, crystallize your thoughts, and articulate them in a way that's helpful to people is super important.
And very quickly, how do you do that? Like, is it pen and paper, or are you writing on an iPad? Like, how do you actually get your thoughts down?
Yeah, it's funny when I take notes. I don't use AI to take notes. I still like to type them out. I like the tactile feel and so on. But when I do it, I use technology, different things. Sometimes I use Notion. Sometimes I use Evernote,
Yeah.
depending on if I have it. Like, for example, sometimes inspiration just hits you, and on a given day, I'll just crank out like 5 initial thoughts,
Yeah.
and then I'll use Notion to kind of percolate those those thoughts along the curve as they become more crystallized in the days to come. But yeah, I do use technology.
Brilliant. And where do like you said, you're a researcher by heart. Where do you go to find out more about growing your business?
Yeah. So, it's funny. So I read, a bunch of books that people have written. I've participated in programs myself on
Yeah.
growing and scaling your business. And it's funny the way I think about it, and I say this at the end of Sell the Way You Buy, is I said, if I asked you to make a lasagna, make a recipe for something, you
Yes.
wouldn't just go out and find one recipe and just make that, right?
Yes.
You would look at a bunch of different recipes and you say, what ingredients do I have in my kitchen, and what cooking vessels do I have? And then you'd kind of make something and you'd iterate from there. And that's where I think about scaling as well. There's lots of tactics out there on scaling,
Yes.
and it's not a one size fits all. So I like this idea of, going out there, books, content reading, and then figuring out, okay, like what aligns with your mindset, your methodology. Are you like a big ticket person, a smaller ticket person? You want to build a funnel, not funnel, you want to write a book. So, I encourage people to go out there. There's tons of great content that'll help you develop your point of view on this.
Brilliant. And what's one wish we could grant you?
Oh my goodness. Just in general. Well, this might be too cerebral, but the number one thing that I've said this online, the number one thing that I wish for is that I want to die an old man. So so I say that to everyone because when you're going through a tough time and you have cancer, the only thing you want is to not have cancer. And I remember when I came back from my first surgery, my surgeon, who also coined the name Cerebral, said, "David, good news. You're gonna die an old man."
Oh,
And it was
brilliant.
music to my ears. So
Best,
that's
yeah, best words you could ever hear.
yeah. Every year when I get older, and we talked about my eyesight's not as much. I'm putting the pill bottle further away now. I'm like, you know what? My dream is coming true. So that's what I would say.
I remember when my surgeon said you're alive. That was music to my ears. The last one is, what do you know now that you wish you had known a lot earlier when running cerebral selling?
Yeah. Well, I'd say, sometimes you think of it in terms of the regret, like, oh, if I only knew this, then I would have, life would have turned out better. But I would say, having done this now for several years, I would say that the bets that I placed on content creation absolutely paid off. So that's why I say like I have a high conviction around that.
Yeah.
And the second thing is the network. I totally not underestimated, but I underestimated how wonderful it was to work at Salesforce and to have the network of people that years later have gone on to do such great things. You don't realize at the time how powerful it is. But I would say for everyone out there, like lean into your network. It doesn't have to be so hard. If you do good work, if people know you
Yes.
and know you as someone who adds value, then selling just becomes so much easier. And I'm grateful to not just work with Salesforce, but all of the other leaders that I used to work with at Salesforce that have not now gone to do great things and our friends. So I say to people, like, lean into your network. I totally underestimated the value of that several years ago, but it's turned out to be huge. So
Yeah, well, one of many brilliant points that you shared with us today. So thank you so much for coming on the podcast. And if there's a third book, we'd love to have you back when that comes out. Thanks a lot for coming
all
on
right.
today, David.
My pleasure, Paul. Thanks for inviting me.
What a great interview with David, a two-time cancer survivor, and you can tell that he's just a wonderful guy and a wonderful brain. I love the fact that he talked about content, and the content, however you create it, is so important. Leveraging that network, and it's never the wrong time to start developing that network, and also the strengths that effectively using your strengths to define when to hire a salesperson. I think had some great advice around that. But reach out to David on LinkedIn, mention that you heard him on the show, and thank him, and also ask him some questions. Also, share it with your peers; they could benefit from it, and they'll think you're a rock star. And also, watch again David and I on the Paul Higgins YouTube channel. And last thing is, see you next time on the Paul Higgins Show. Time for action. Let me know what you implemented from the show. I promise to respond. Plus, get the Tech Consultants Roadmap at paulhigginsmentoring.com/roadmap.